Tonight, I want to focus on a shift that is more important than any single indictment, poll, or rally. For the first time in a serious, sustained way, a number of Donald Trump's own aides, advisors, and appointees are breaking with him. Not in private, not in whispers, but in courtrooms and on national television, people who were in the room, people who helped him build his presidency and his political movement, now saying under oath and under their own names that they were misled, that lines were crossed, and that they will cooperate with the investigation surrounding him. That is the story behind the headline, "Key Aides Break Ranks, Triggering Turmoil for Trump." Let's break down what's happening, why it matters, and how it could reshape both his legal battles and his political future. 1. The Georgia case. Lawyers turn witnesses. We start in Georgia. The election interference case there is where we've seen the clearest and most dramatic example of Trump's allies flipping. 4 of the original defendants, all once firmly in Trump's corner, have now pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. We're talking about Sidney Powell, one of the most visible faces of Trump's post-2020 legal efforts, Jenna Ellis, a senior Trump campaign attorney, Kenneth Chesebro, the architect of the alternate electors strategy, Scott Hall, a Trump-aligned bail bondsman involved in the Coffee County voting system's breach. Each of them has now stood in a courtroom, raised a hand, and admitted some level of criminal wrongdoing tied to efforts to keep Trump in power after the 2020 election. And in exchange, each has agreed to testify truthfully against the remaining defendants, which include Donald Trump himself. Let me read you part of what Jenna Ellis told the court when she pleaded guilty. This is from the official court transcript reported by multiple outlets. "If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I failed to do my due diligence." Roll that sentiment in your mind for a second. A top Trump lawyer telling a judge that if she had understood the facts, she would have walked away from Donald Trump's post-election effort. Pause. Insert clip of Jenna Ellis in court if available. For years, Trump has told his supporters that the people around him believed the election was stolen and that they were all united in that belief. These pleas undercut that narrative. By pleading guilty, Ellis, Powell, and Chesebro are admitting that crimes were committed in the effort to overturn the election, accepting that prosecutors have enough evidence to convict them, agreeing to testify against their former allies, including Trump. And because these are lawyers, not low-level volunteers, their testimony goes to the heart of Trump's defense. You cannot claim that everything you did was lawful and above board, while your own lawyers now say in open court that the plan was criminal and that they regret taking part. That's why these plea deals rattled Trump's orbit so deeply. 2. Inside the West Wing, Meadows, Pence, and the federal case. The Georgia flips are one piece of this. The other is what's been happening quietly in the federal investigations run by special counsel Jack Smith. The federal January 6th case doesn't name Trump's aides as co-defendants, but it is built on their testimony. According to reporting from multiple major outlets, Trump's former chief of staff Mark Meadows has cooperated extensively with Jack Smith's team under a grant of limited immunity. Now, we don't have the full transcript of what Meadows said. That's still behind closed doors. But sources familiar with his testimony have told reporters that Meadows confirmed a few crucial points. That Trump was repeatedly told by his own staff, campaign, and legal advisors that there was no evidence of widespread fraud sufficient to change the election outcome, that Trump still pushed false claims anyway, and that Trump's public statements about the election did not match what his own team was telling him privately. Again, these are reports based on anonymous sources, not documents we can read ourselves, but they match a pattern we've seen again and again. People who were close to Trump privately telling investigators that the election was not stolen, even as Trump continues to say the opposite in public. And Meadows is not alone. Former Vice President Mike Pence has also testified before the federal grand jury. Pence has been more public about his break with Trump. You've heard him say it many times now. President Trump was wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. That is not just a political statement. That is a direct contradiction of the core legal and political claim Trump still makes to this day. Insert clip of Mike Pence saying, "President Trump was wrong. I had no right to overturn the election." Other senior figures, like former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, his deputy Patrick Philbin, former DHS official Ken Cuccinelli, and senior campaign aides, have all reportedly testified as well. Taken together, these witnesses paint a picture in which Trump was told the claims of massive fraud were baseless. He was warned that the fake elector scheme and the pressure on Mike Pence were legally problematic, and he chose to move forward anyway. If prosecutors can prove that in court through the testimony of his own staff, it makes it much harder for Trump to argue that he genuinely believed he had won, which is at the core of his defense. 3. The Mar-a-Lago documents case from loyal employee to star witness. We've seen a similar pattern in the classified documents case out of Florida. In that case, a little-known IT worker at Mar-a-Lago went from being a Trump employee to one of the government's most important witnesses. According to court filings, this employee originally told investigators he didn't recall being asked to delete security footage at the property. After he obtained new independent legal counsel, he changed his testimony. He then told prosecutors that he had, in fact, been asked to do exactly that, to help delete video that showed movement of boxes of documents at Mar-a-Lago after the government had subpoenaed that footage. Again, we're relying on what's in official court filings here. This isn't gossip. It's in the record. That shift in testimony was so significant that DOJ removed him from the list of co-conspirators and granted him immunity. He is now expected to be a key witness if and when that case goes to trial. One person, not a politician, not a cable news pundit, just an employee who decided he was not going to risk prison to protect anyone. That's what prosecutors look for, the moment when the threat of real criminal exposure forces people to choose between loyalty to a boss and loyalty to the law. We're seeing more and more of those choices break against Trump. 4. Former top officials go public. Alongside the courtroom drama, there is a broader political break happening out in the open. Some of the most powerful individuals who served in Trump's administration, people he handpicked, are now telling the country that he should not return to the White House. Let's run through a few of them. Bill Barr, former Attorney General. Trump's own former Attorney General, Bill Barr, has said repeatedly that there was no widespread fraud in 2020. After the classified documents indictment, Barr told Fox News, if even half of this is true, then he's toast. He has also said that Trump is increasingly detached from reality when it comes to the election. Insert clip of Bill Barr criticizing Trump's handling of classified documents or 2020 claims. This is the man who ran Trump's Justice Department, now telling conservative audiences that the cases against Trump are serious and that the evidence is strong. John Kelly, former White House Chief of Staff. Then there's John Kelly, Trump's longest-serving White House Chief of Staff, a retired four-star Marine general. In an extraordinary statement reported by CNN, Kelly described Trump as a person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. Kelly also confirmed multiple accounts that Trump privately belittled injured and fallen U.S. service members, calling them suckers and losers. Those remarks were originally reported anonymously. Kelly put his name to them. That is not normal. Former chiefs of staff almost never talk this way about the presidents they served. Mark Esper, John Bolton, and others. Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper has said that Trump suggested shooting protesters in the legs and using the military in ways Esper believed were illegal or dangerous. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton has called Trump unfit for office and has openly campaigned against him returning to power. Former Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley has spoken about having to guard against Trump's desire to use the military to stay in office after losing the election. Milley has even said he took steps to ensure that the nuclear chain of command could not be misused. Each of these men had access to the most sensitive information in the country. Each of them was trusted by Trump at one point, and now each of them is warning in their own way, that a second Trump term would be more extreme and less constrained than the first. 5. Trump's response: attack, discredit, deny. So how is Trump responding to all of this? Very much in character. When allies flip or criticize him, he almost never engages with the substance of what they're saying. Instead, he goes after them personally, calling them weak, disgruntled, or rhinos, claiming they're trying to sell books, get TV contracts, or curry favor with the deep state, insisting they were never really important to him in the first place, even when they held some of the most powerful jobs in the U.S. government. We've seen this pattern with Bill Barr, John Kelly, Mike Pence, Mark Milley, and now, in Georgia, with his own former lawyers, Trump's media allies often follow the same script, trying to discredit these figures as opportunists or traitors, while downplaying their access to the inner workings of the administration. At the same time, Trump continues to insist that all of the investigations are political, that the indictments are witch hunts, and that the legal system is being weaponized against him. Insert. Clip of Trump calling the cases election interference or witch hunts. It is a message designed to keep his core supporters with him, no matter who testifies, no matter what documents are produced, and no matter how many insiders flip. 6. What this means, legally. Let's talk about what all of this actually means in a courtroom. Prosecutors in complex cases, especially conspiracy and racketeering cases, build their arguments around cooperating witnesses. Juries don't just want documents and timelines, they want to hear from people who were there who can explain, in plain English, who gave the orders. What was said in private and what everyone understood the plan to be. When defendants start pleading guilty and agreeing to testify, it has 3 major effects. It strengthens the government's case. You don't just have emails and texts, you have human beings explaining those messages from the inside. It puts pressure on remaining defendants. When your former allies are now government witnesses, your own risk goes up, especially if they can corroborate one another. It narrows the defense options. It becomes harder to argue that everyone believed the conduct was lawful when your own co-defendants have admitted in court that it was criminal. This is precisely what has unfolded in Georgia. Powell, Ellis, and Chesebro were not bystanders. They were central players in the very schemes that prosecutors say were illegal, and they have now pledged to testify truthfully about strategy meetings' internal memos. Pressure campaigns on state officials, the fake electors plan. If the Fulton County case does go to trial against Trump and the remaining defendants, those insiders will be crucial. The same is true in the federal cases, where Meadows, Pence, and other former officials may end up as star witnesses. 7. What this means politically, legally, the story is clear. This wave of cooperation is bad news for Trump. Politically, the picture is more complicated. On one hand, polls have shown that Republican primary voters, at least up through late 2024, largely shrugged off the indictments. In many surveys, every new charge was followed by a bump in Trump's standing among GOP voters. It's a kind of rally around the flag effect. The more the system goes after Trump, the more his base embraces him. On the other hand, there is a different audience watching these developments. Independent voters, politically moderate Republicans, and people who don't live and breathe politics every day. For that group, seeing a steady stream of top Trump officials, senior military leaders, and former cabinet members warning about him, that moves opinion more slowly, but it does move it. When your own former chief of staff, your own former attorney general, your own vice president, and your own top generals are all saying, in different ways, that you are unfit or dangerous, that matters. Even if hardcore supporters ignore it, swing voters tend to notice. And that's where this turmoil inside Trump's circle could be most consequential, not just in courtrooms, but in the next national election, whatever form that takes. 8. The bigger pattern. Stepping back, there's a larger pattern here that goes beyond Trump as an individual. We are seeing what happens when a political movement is built around personal loyalty to one man rather than loyalty to institutions or the law. People are rewarded as long as they are loyal. They are attacked and discarded the moment they break ranks. But when criminal exposure becomes real, when prosecutors start presenting evidence and judges start setting trial dates, loyalty suddenly has a cost. Some people are willing to pay that cost, others are not. In Trump's world, we are watching a growing number of former insiders choose the law, or at least their own self-preservation, over loyalty to him. That doesn't mean they're heroes. Many of them are only coming forward when cornered, when there is a plea deal on the table, or a book to sell, or a reputation to salvage. But from the perspective of accountability, their motives are less important than their testimony. Because at the end of the day, courts do not run on cable news talking points. They run on evidence, witnesses, documents, records, and increasingly, those witnesses are people who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump. We'll continue to track this as more information comes out. New plea deals, new testimony, new public statements from those who were closest to Trump during some of the most volatile moments in recent American history. If you find this kind of detailed, fact-based coverage useful, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. There's a lot more to come.